Awesome. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today, Heather?
Fantastic.
Yay! Well, welcome to IMU with Leilani and
Heather.
yay! We're excited to have you guys here with us today. Kind of one of the things, oh, and I just wanted to recap, actually do a throwback real quick of the laundry detergent that we did a few weeks ago. I did notice a significant difference in lint.
Did
Thank
you?
you for that, Heather. I did. And there was less lint with the Melaleuca soap than there was with the Earth Breeze soap. And the Earth Breeze, if you remember, was the
sheet, right?
sheets. Yes, it was the sheets. Now, with that, it's an interesting thing as well, as perhaps it's because of the fiberglass or whatever components they have in it. I do feel like my clothes, they seemed a little cleaner to me with the sheets.
Mm.
Was a lot more lint. So, and it's not like they're dirty with the other. I just, they seemed a little almost brighter. So maybe they even just have brighteners in it. I don't know. I don't know exactly how those things, because I'm not like
Oh.
a chemist. Like you're pretty close to a chemist. But I did notice that, but there was more lint. There was significantly more lint. I like to say a little, but now I'm thinking, and it's like, no, there was like one load went through at one point, and Hank, my son, comes in and he was like, who didn't empty the lint trap last time? Because he's thinking it must not have been emptied for a few loads. And I said, no,
Right.
I've been doing laundry. I know it's been emptied. And he's like, Mom, there's no way. And I know, no kidding, like the lint trap that I have, it's just this small little rectangular thing, but usually you just get lint maybe that's about this thick, you know what I'm talking about? It
Yeah.
was like, it was fluffy, like you could compress it. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I was like, very interesting. So I'll be honest, I haven't used that one anymore, and because I'm like, well, shredding my clothes isn't going to help us in the long run, even
Yeah.
though appearance was cleaner. I don't know that it was actually cleaner, or if
Yeah.
it was like pulling it apart, and so I was seeing new fabric pieces, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so we're back just using the Melaleuca, and it's fine. You know, everything smells clean, everything feels clean, everything is clean. And so we're good. But yeah, I just wanted to revisit that just because I did gather, and I collected it, and I thought I should have saved it. Well, actually I did save it. I saved it for a long time above the dryer just so that I would know. And I had two bins, you know, and one collected the Earth Breeze and one collected the Melaleuca. And then they were like, how long are you going to keep this? And I was like, oh, so I threw them together and I threw them away. And then I was like, darn it, I should have like kept it so that I could have shown you guys the two separate bins. But
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, unless it's brand new fluffy towels or something that I'm washing, we hardly get hardly any lint with even like a full washer dryer load.
oh yeah, yeah. And that's, had you not said that, I wouldn't have noticed. I would
Mm.
not have even thought to look for it. I mean, I guess I kind of noticed. I was like, there's a lot more lint than I recall, but I was dismissing
Yeah.
where it was coming from. I was just like, my washing
Yeah.
machine sucks. Was actually
Well,
what I
and
was thinking.
I think the other piece of it too, um, is that the lint trap doesn't catch all the lint, right? There's some of it that ends up going out your exhaust and all the rest of it. And so it's better for your appliances, not just your clothes, when there's less lint produced.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the thing about when it does go out the exhaust, and I'm glad you brought that up, because as everyone knows here, I love to DIY. When you clean out those things, or and they're packed full of lint, that's a fire hazard. And they do, because the fabric or the particles of lint that are moving out, they're moist, they're damp, so they cling to the sides, and then they begin to cling to each other. Um, and you can really, like, if you're not cleaning it out annually, you need to be cleaning out your lint exhaust annually, you know. just because it, like you said, it gets into your appliance, and your appliance has its own lint exhaust. And then I'm talking about just the one that goes from the appliance to the out of the house. And this is why sometimes people have to run their washing or their dryer multiple times, because they're like, why won't it dry? Well, even though the exhaust should be this big, if you have lint that is filling it mostly up and you've only got a size that big, you're going to have your dryer is going to have to work harder, and you're going to have to use more electricity to try to force that air through that small pocket.
Yeah.
Then it heats up faster, and that's where the fire hazard happens. So yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was not even like, I didn't even think of that.
Everything
And
happens for a reason. Thank you for bringing it back up and letting us know what the verdict was.
right. Well, I was like, oh my gosh, because they're like, how long are you going to keep this? And I was like, well, I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot of lint in there. And like I said, that one day, and Hank, and it wasn't like I was doing anything new, like new clothing, new bedding, new towels, like
Yeah.
you said.
And it's funny, I remember as a kid, it was kind of fun to clean out the lint trap to see if you could get it all in one sheet. Like, that's how much lint was in the lint trap growing up, right? It's like you lift up one piece and you're like, oh yeah, it's a whole sheet, man. Like, we could like make a shirt out of this.
Attach it, or a beard. But what you're saying is true.
Recognizing as a kid where it was coming from, that it was like pieces of my clothes. It wasn't just something that happens when you do laundry.
Exactly. That you're literally shredding your clothes,
Yeah.
which is going to cost you more money in the long run, because you're going to have to replace things, and just speaking on that, kids are hard enough on clothes. We don't need the washing detergents to be just as hard.
Yeah.
We want them to clean them, not destroy them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Better all around.
yes, it is. So today I had kind of some interesting things that occurred this last week. As you know, my mother-in-law, so I don't have her full time, that I was becoming her caretaker, her primary caretaker. And we've decided that that's not in the best interest of anybody currently, because she does not want to leave her home. And it would just cause too much disruption, which would mean more disruption on this end. So we have her a few days a week for the majority of the day, and then we take her home and let her sleep in her bed type thing. It's working out okay. The thing that I've noticed is the children are having a very difficult time with their mother no longer being capable, and not being able to cognitively understand them. And she's become very repetitive. She started talking about people who are deceased as though she just spoke with them yesterday, and she's struggling with this. She's short tempered, nitpicky, and just not a whole lot of patience, and a bit snappy with everybody, including like the little kids, which I'll be honest, works my nerves when she's here because I'm like, my 6-year-old and my 10-year-old don't need you like snapping at them like that, so I have to, it's an interesting balance, getting her being like, okay, mom, leave it alone. Like, it's okay. That's not the deal you're making of it, without actually engaging, because she can't have the argument. She won't understand. And whatever resolution we come to, she'll forget it. It'll be gone. So there's no.
We were talking, previously when she was ill with some infections and stuff, hoping that this would resolve once the infection's resolved. But
yeah,
as I know, from over 20 years in healthcare, that it doesn't always come back to baseline. And it sounds like it hasn't, hey? Yeah.
Yeah,
and it is a tough transition, because like you said, they get to a point where you can't reason with them. It's just they see things the way that they see things. And most of the time, I just tell people, just roll with it. Don't argue that this person is already deceased, or don't argue that it's, 2021, not 1945. Like, just kind of go with it. And it does make it tougher when they get short. And what I have found a lot of times is that it happens a lot when they realize they're not on their game anymore.
Mhm. I would totally agree with you there. Because with what she's going through, which is dementia, it's there's pockets where she remembers herself the way that she was, all the things that she should be able to do. And then we have these windows where we're like, we're not sure where you're going with anything that you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Um, and what you're saying is absolutely right as well, that there is no reasoning with her. We were watching a movie. She was like, well, let's watch a movie. So we watched Bonanza because that's her era. And she's just so happy to watch it. But then she was saying, wait, I thought we were watching Gunsmoke. And I said, oh, we only found Bonanza. And she's like, why did I think Gunsmoke? And then she became frustrated with herself for not remembering correctly, right? And I know that this is where a lot of their short-temperedness comes in because she can't, it's not
flowing the way it did, but there's enough there that they know something's not right.
Well, and I believe because we've spoken on this show a lot about choice and choices, but there is a point in our life or in some scenarios with those who with mental illnesses and disabilities and things like that, cognitively, they can't, the choice is absent. She can't choose when it does or doesn't come on. And she didn't learn the skill, I'll be quite frank, of choosing her emotion when she was younger. So I don't know that she even would know how to implement it now.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas I know another woman who she had kind of a difficult life, but she's always chosen happiness. She's always chosen to smile and get along, whether it was to I don't think that's the way to handle everything because she never really addressed anything. However, here she is in her aging years. And so she still just kind of lives in this like la 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 place, because she had chosen that for so long that now it's become her habit, even with her mind going in and out, opposed to individuals who haven't learned how to take that choice and choose. And they just kind of take the repercussions of whatever life delivers, and they just feel very pushed around. Now here she is in the end of her life, still feeling very pushed around, And I find that significant, actually, the two moving along the same path parallel, but very opposing. Is that the right word? Like they couldn't be more polarized in the way they're handling it, just because of the choices they made when they were younger and the habit to know to choose, which I hadn't anticipated that for the older generation, that the habits they make when they're younger are really, you see a lot of that distinction of what they were chose, what was just a mask and what was actually a choice. You know what I mean? In older years. And I didn't anticipate seeing that and having two persons that I know very intimately witnessing the exact same and just being like, wow, you couldn't be more opposed.
And every person who has the unfortunate experience of going through dementia, no two are exactly the same. I've seen a lot of it, and everybody's got their own nuance, their own dance through it. And some of it looks prettier than others, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, what you just said, I can't say that it's all, but that's the way that I understood it. I could see, because I've known them both for a long time,
Yeah,
uh, how they behaved when they were younger and how it's showing up as they're older.
absolutely.
And it's like,
Absolutely.
and
And
I
I
think
think
that's where the adage, go ahead.
yeah, that's where it all plays out. In my role, most of the people I didn't have the privilege of knowing earlier, right? They came into my life when this was an issue, other than my mom. And my mom went through it. And, she had so much stuff from her life that she shoved, right? Never dealt with, shoved, which I believe is a big contributor to people who end up with dementia. It ends up eating up your brain. But you know, most of the other people that I saw walk through it, I only saw the latter part of their lives, right? But again, the people that learn certain coping mechanisms earlier, it's going to be that long-term memory that sticks and those habits that stick rather than trying to learn a new task or a new habit when
And-
you're already at a deficit.
Right. And I believe that's where the adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, actually comes from, because we might, people our age, I don't think we're old, but people our age might call themselves old, and then they lock themselves into this idea, right? Rather than, no, you can always be learning and adapting. But
Oh,
these individual women that I'm speaking of, they're at an age, I mean, they're 84 and 85 years old, you know? And
yeah,
for some people, actually, that's still young and their minds are still intact. But both
absolutely.
of these individuals did just what you're saying, where they would shove, 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 right? Their emotions down. And if you read in Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, she talks about dementia, right? And that is one of the
Mhm.
attributes. Is that the right word? Symptoms, distinctions
Yeah,
of dementia is the way that is typically it's anger and stuff that you've pushed down, right? Repressed emotions.
yeah.
And but the one individual, she had repressed emotions, but then I mean, you could see that she was not happy about it and she just felt very pushed around by life. Whereas the other individual had repressed emotions, but was like, oh well, I can't fix it. Oh well, I can't fix it, right?
Yes.
Um, I don't think either one of them worked, but it's just made getting through these last years with them. One is definitely a lot easier just because she's in the habit of choosing happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
The other is, and it is tough to see them go through it.
it is.
And
It's a very
and I,
scary time for them when they have the awareness that things are not the same as they used to be for themselves.
yes, and they need constant reassurance. They're no different. Like, it really honestly starts to feel like having a toddler, but in adult body that's very fragile, you know. Um, but even that is a funny thing, as I just said that, because the one woman in my life, her body is very fragile and she's an emotional roller coaster all the time, you know, and her body is fragile. Like, we have to be careful with her. She always has new aches and pains. And um, she falls a lot, and she fell in her bathroom the other day and I had to help her. And she was saying, oh, just take my arms and pull me out of the bathroom. And I was like, oh my gosh, they'd probably pop off. Like things aren't holding together like they used to, you know? I was like, I cannot do that. So I had to actually have my son Hank come and pick his grandmother up and get her to, to stand up. And because none of us could do it properly without hurting her,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But he's so big, he was able to just get right under her and like literally do all the work for her and then put her on her feet. Um, and then this other woman, she's not as delicate, the one who's chosen to be happy. Her body seems a little sturdier, like, not, and she's not falling and she's not going through these things, which I find interesting now that we're discussing that a little bit?
Yeah.
Or that, well,
What I kind of take from that is that like a lot of the internal decay and the osteoporosis and like the all of that kind of stuff really comes from your body living in a state of stress and acidosis. Our bodies need to run within a certain pH to stay alive. And so stress, smoking, alcohol, like those kinds of things tend living in fear, right? Living in worry, living in regrets, living in anger, all of those things. Um, they cause our bodies to be in an acidic state, which then requires our systems to pull out calcium and phosphorus from our bones to help balance the pH of our bodies. And so my guess is that perhaps the one that's more sturdy, actually her choice to be like, I haven't really dealt with it, but whatever, I'm moving on and putting on a happy face, was actually successful enough in putting in that on that happy face that she had less acidosis in her body. Whereas your mother-in-law, it just kind of started
eating away at her.
manifesting a little different, right? Like
Yeah.
my mom was a larger woman all of my growing up. And she actually had a lot of back issues, knee issues, like part of it from her weight, but also part of it from being a registered nurse before there were lifts, right? So you're physically lifting people and all of that kind of stuff with maybe not the best body mechanics. So all of that pieced together, she had all of these issues. And then she hit a certain point in her dementia where the weight just started to come off and she started to be in less pain. And she like could sit like this. Like she would pull up in her chair and she'd be like, so what's new with you guys? You know, and I'm like, I've never seen her sit like that in my entire life. But now her body is smaller because the parts of the brain that remembered all this other stuff that she never dealt with kind of like, I don't know, got disconnected or something, right? She forgot that she lived on cheese and Mentos and actually went out for proper meals and got better nutrition and was just in a space where it's like, all right, body wise, we can be a little healthier right now. So that's, you know, like I said, everybody that goes through it, it's a little bit different, but she actually got more mobile as the dementia progressed. And then of course it declined, like, you know, when she was in the later stages, but her mobility increased.
That is amazing. That is so fascinating. And I find that like could totally spin us off into a whole nother topic around how our thoughts hold our weight and different things like that. Simply from what you just stated, where, you know, she held more weight for a long duration of your life, probably before you were in her life as her child. There was a window where she did those things, pulled her knee up and was this happy, chirpy woman. And then, you know, the burdens of caring for other people and not, I hate to say it like burdens.
But some people make it a burden. Like some people take it on as their burden, right?
Yeah, and I can see that it wasn't her children. Like being, like you said, there weren't lifts, there
Yeah.
weren't mechanisms and systems within the hospital arena to assist, to really support nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And nurses were the support. They were the ones who did the heavy lifting, literally. And so maybe she felt like she had to put more girth on even to be able to do it. But I find that interesting that, like you said, that must have just been like done. And all of a sudden she just went, shh.
Yeah.
That's really quite fascinating. One we don't have time for here, but we'll have to. Where'd you go? Sorry, that was my phone. That was
gone.
me. um, these Zoom things, right? But we'll have to bring that up on another one, just because that's a fascinating topic.
Mhm.
But then with that, it's realizing we've talked a lot, like I said, going back to choice, you know, and how critical it is to be choosing now for yourself to create a habit, so that at least in your elder years, you know, you will still be maybe a little sturdier, or um, a little more pleasant.
Well, and
Because
maintaining that peaceful mind and body that's going to maintain you into your elder years, your 80s, 90s, 100,
mhm,
right? Being able to release what you're hanging on to and be free of it, instead of having it in there as these, this energy or these toxins that are,
mhm.
eating away at certain parts of you.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like even we're discussing, even though, creating more quality of life for
Mhm,
yourself,
absolutely.
not just for now, but for later, like creating habits so that your quality of life is more intact. I saw this thing. There's this one woman who is a bodybuilder, and she's like 86 years old.
Mm.
She is amazing, and she's gorgeous. Like, her whole body has a sense of youthness about it, even though um, you can tell that she's a little older.
Yeah.
You cannot, there's no way you would say, wow, that's an 86-year-old woman. You would never in your wildest dreams think that. But she wasn't always that way. It was actually, I think, when she was 58 that she took up bodybuilding.
Mm.
When she was like 58 years old, she began bodybuilding because her sister got really sick or something like that. And she was like, I wanted more quality of life. So here she is now in her 80s, and she's still, you know, pushing iron and focusing on her mindset, and is kind of living, extended her quality of life
Mhm.
um way out into her 80s. And who knows, I mean, she could live, be
Not
100,
buying into the
whatever,
paradigm of what aging means,
right?
right? It's like I don't subscribe to that paradigm. I'm making
See,
my own.
that's a very, very powerful thing you just said there. And I think a lot of us could miss what you just said. um she hasn't bought into the paradigm of what aging means. I know that so many of us are unaware of just how much control we actually have over our experience through our choice of what we believe,
Huh?
right? And so when you just stated that, and a lot of listeners could miss that, but it's such a powerful thing. You know, if you think that aging means you're going to be all bent over and like, you know, and your teeth are falling out, and you're got gummers or whatever, you're going to create that. That will become your reality.
Yeah.
And if you have a different idea about that, you know, being ageless, like this woman,
Buy
you
into
guys got to go.
that.
What's that?
You can just choose not to buy into that package.
That's what I mean, right? Or even like this woman who is, you guys got to go look her up. She's like an 85-year-old bodybuilder. It's incredible. It's incredible what she has done by choice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Once
And not
again,
just accepting societal norms or what, you know, has been put out there as what's supposed to happen.
hmm
Anything is
hmm
possible.
anything is possible. It's an interesting thing. So the other day I went to pick up my mother-in-law, and she said, she usually needs help getting up out of the chair, right? And I went to help her up, and she says, no, no, I want to show you what I've learned. So she scoots all the way to the edge of her chair, like her therapist has been teaching her. And she gets her hands beside her, you know, and she pushes herself up, you know, and she does it. And we were like, oh, you did it, right? We did. Well, her granddaughter from my niece on that side and I were clapping for her. Some of the other people in the room didn't seem as excited for her. And I don't think they realized that was noticed. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that it has an effect. And I think that's why it's a funny component, because you can't be responsible for the way people feel. But for those who don't understand how much control they have over their own feelings, you can contribute to how they feel, because they don't know how to navigate it yet.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like it reminds me of playing dodgeball for some reason. All of a sudden that showed up in my head. If you've got an experienced dodgeballer and they can dodge it, right? You're not going to hit them with the ball. But if you've got a newbie out there, it's like, boom, boom, and they're like, oh my gosh, stop, right? Right? Yeah, you're pummeling them. And so we can do those things inadvertently. Yes, it is their responsibility to learn how to dodge. Yes, it's their responsibility to learn how to not let it affect them. Yes, it's their responsibility to take responsibility for how they feel. Simultaneously, celebrate people. Like, don't be a jerk. That's your responsibility as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a fine line, because you also got to be honest. Honesty isn't always being a jerk, even though it can feel like a jerk sometimes to people. And it's a very fine line, because it just is what it is. And quite frankly, this is a very, very interesting thought that just came into my head, or a memory. My daughter and my niece, we were over helping my sister get her house ready to sell. And they decided to play in a box. So my daughter gets in the box. My niece begins to stab holes in the box. Yes, with a screwdriver. While my niece is in the box, while my daughter is in the box, my other daughter is like, that's a terrible idea, stop. And then she comes running, mom, mom. And I come around and my daughter has busted out of the box and is screaming, crying. And my niece goes running to her mother, screaming and crying, right? So everybody's upset now. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on, right? And my niece proceeds to because my daughter, she has a bit of a learning disability. She has delayed learning, right? So we have that here in our home as well. And I will tell you, I've always taught her, though, she still has to take responsibility for her choices, right? I'm just throwing that in there. So anyway, my daughter, she has a hard time expressing herself and really getting her words out. And she was like, and my niece just proceeded to say, she jumped out of the box and she pushed me out of the way and I got hurt. And she made me feel bad. And it just went on. And my daughter goes like this to me, goes like this. Her hand is covered in blood. There's blood running down her face. And I was like, oh. And I looked at my sister, and her daughter looked at my daughter and went like, oh, this was something. And then my other daughter was like, she was stabbing the box that she was in with a screwdriver. Right. And then all of a sudden we understood what was going on.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so my daughter Kea was not being a jerk when she pushed you out of the way. You were doing something that was incredibly dangerous, thoughtlessly, thinking nothing, right?
Yeah, just thinking it was a game or whatever. It's like, I don't know what was going on in your head, but that was not a good plan.
Maybe I don't, right? I don't know what the thought was there. And then of course the tables turned, and then my sister's face went from, your daughter's being mean, to, I am so sorry. And then correcting her child, being like, why would you do that? Why would you stab a box that somebody is inside of? And she was like, and I'm sure that, they were young and she was thinking I'm poking air holes, except for the one child who was like, don't do that, was younger than both of them by like 4 years. That's Alora, but she's like the mother hen anyway, right?
Yeah.
But she was like, that is a bad idea. You guys need to stop. Right. But it's one of those things where sometimes the truth looks like someone's being a jerk and they're not, you just have to look at it from another perspective, right?
Mhm.
If you're stabbing the box, they might be like, stop. And you might be like, you're hurting my feelings. And it's like, no, no, no. You're actually the one who was doing the hurting. Right. You
Yeah.
have to really, that just came into my mind. And I was like, oh, that was such a day. It was such a day. And I just was like, we're going home now. We're done helping you with your house. And I think I'm done looking at you guys right now. Right. And I wasn't mad. I mean, I was upset, but I wasn't angry. We went home and then we came back, I think 2 days later to help them, with something else in the house because that's what they were doing. So it's, it's important to feel your emotions, feel the feelings and let them go through you,
Right.
rather
It's
than
not,
sit
it's
inside
not
of
that you're never going to feel those emotions. It's how long do you choose to sit in them?
it. Yeah. And I couldn't brush it off. I was like, I'm going home.
Yeah.
And I gathered up my kids, and I had kids who didn't want to leave because they were off playing with her sons. And I was like, nope, we're done. We're done. I'm going home. I still love you. And I kissed them all goodbye, but I don't want to look at you right now. I'm going home.
I need to remove myself from this situation so
Mhm.
that I can see it more clearly.
Mhm. Well, and even I just was, and I let myself be angry about it and bewildered about it and just be like, what was,
Yeah.
so that I could actually, when we came together again, be like, okay, it's okay. And not just like, it's okay. I'm shoving my emotions down and ignoring them.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. I mean, you were wrong. This action was wrong and it's not okay. And as
But
long as you
we're
understand,
okay.
mhm, yeah, but we're okay because
Yeah.
all can be forgiven. I have my own spaces where I have to be forgiven, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's oftentimes something we need to remember just in general, that we're not victims. We get to choose, even when we're not perfect, to step up and say, I'm sorry, and correct it. And when we've been inflicted or infringed upon, then to say, I see that you're not perfect. I see that,
Yeah.
whatever pedestal I may have created for you, there is no such thing.
Yeah.
We're all just humans. But yeah, I
Exactly.
just thought of that because it was one of those scenarios that could have, until you dug a little deeper, would have been easy to be like, oh, Kaya, why did you just throw her like that? Because she was the quickest one to speak and talk about her trauma,
Mhm.
And yeah,
And
that's
how we
often
all
what.
see things through a different lens.
Mhm. Say that one more time.
How we all see things through a different lens,
Yes.
right? Like your niece saw it through, like, I don't see any problem with this. And then she freaked out. So that scared me. That hurt my feelings. Whereas Kay is like, I thought it was a good idea to get in the box. And then now my head's bleeding. Like I needed to get out of there.
And then you were like, I'm going to stab it.
Yeah. And without sharing both those sides, then the girls would only have their own perspective, right?
Right. We're so critical to be willing to hear each other and
Mhm.
to listen to each other's sides to get a bigger picture,
Yeah.
and why you even have to be willing to speak. I found that was one thing, with this dementia that my mother-in-law is suffering from. She is definitely having to speak more. Like,
Mm.
she's more vocal than she had been before. She used to do a lot of just clamping up and not sharing her true feelings. Whereas now that's why she seems so snappy and she seems so sharp, and because she's not holding back her feelings anymore. And her children are shocked by it because they're not used to it.
Yeah.
They're hurt by it because this isn't our mom. This isn't how she behaves, right? But
Right.
as an outsider, because that's what I am, I married into the family, so I do see it from a different perspective. I have a different lens that I'm looking through. I'm like, she just always buried it. Now she doesn't have the ability to hold back anymore. like her body has shut that off. So now you just get her full without filter.
And it may not even have to do with what's going on today. It might be something that surfaced from before that again is through a lens that was her lens, right?
Yeah. And they're not open. I mean, and it's interesting, and I'm just going to throw this out here as well, because you know, as well as I know, that just because we're in this industry and we understand these things doesn't mean our family has any belief in them, has anything, understands anything about what we're saying, or applies any of it. Now, that doesn't mean our immediate families, but, and my siblings are pretty good about it, but my husband's family, they have no clue what I do. None at all. And they've never inquired, which is okay, you know, because that would require somewhere for people to take responsibility. And that's just not what was modeled.
Right. And it's a scary place for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of thought we might talk a little bit more today, but I see that we're running out of time. But there is this place where when things come at you, and how do you navigate when you don't have a choice? How do you still control that? You
When it
know,
seems like you don't have a choice.
well, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation, or maybe that's the fairer thing to say the way you said it, because you'll find yourself in a situation where you do feel like your hands are tied, and the only thing you can choose is your behavior, is your reaction, or is your emotion. Like those are the only things you can choose, because you are in a situation where your hands might be tied for a duration of time. And depending on which way you choose, you could actually cinch your hands tighter and stay in that situation longer, or you can start liberating yourself and loosening the binds. And so you're right. When it seems like you don't have a choice, like the one thing you can choose is feel your feelings, identify where you're at, and let it be okay. And then, I mean, just if you're angry, it's okay, be angry, and then move through it. Like, are you going to be angry for the rest of your life? You know?
Lots of people choose that.
Yeah. Or you can be angry for a duration and be like, okay, anger, I'm done. Bye-bye. Bring happiness and joy back in. You know? I have a friend, this just reminded me, I have a friend who lost her son 2 years ago. Last Christmas, because he died the day after Christmas, last Christmas, she didn't do anything, nothing for Christmas. She just couldn't. All of her children are older. It was her youngest child. And she just was like, Christmas just didn't happen this year. I couldn't, you know. But this year, she came to my house. She said, can I bring you some Christmas light? And I said, I would love that. And so she came to my home and she shared with me this beautiful lantern that had all of these beautiful, like those little fairy glittery lights in it. And this little remote control thing. And she plugs it in and she says, because you've been a light in my life, I want you to have this. And I was just like, oh, like, it was so sweet. Right. So that was my Christmas gift from her. And she goes, but I want to show you something. And she opens up her photos, and she had gone to her son's graveside and had completely decorated it for the holidays.
Oh, wow.
She Christmas tree, she brought him wreaths and put his name on it. And like she had gone all out. And she said, it's okay. It's not what I wanted, but it's okay. Right. And she had found a way to choose back into her life rather than just being absent. And yeah, I applaud her for it. And I applauded her for it. You know, we hugged and we cried. And there, at whatever point you're at, you still have the choice. You still have the choice. So choose the thing that serves you, choose the thing that lifts your heart, that makes you feel full, that makes you feel complete. And choose your health, choose your future, because you're the one who has to live in it. So make sure that the choices make sense and are serving to the greatest. So,
love it.
Yeah. With that, we love you, and we will see you guys next week. Mwah. Bye-bye.